Konnichiwa. Welcome to the Martial Maze. I'm with my partner in crime, Barakula
And
Chidoshi.
I'm with my partner here, Israel Lopez Sensei.
What's going on, my G?
My guy, it's been quite some time.
Yeah, no, it has, man. I mean, like, on paper, it seemed like it would be easy just to get back and forth to Massachusetts. And, yeah, like 5 cancellations later.
Yeah, but it's not the same. It's not the same
No,
having you
no, it's
close
not.
by.
No, it's not.
You know?
Yeah, no, yeah. But you know what? I mean, the last route to the truth, you knocked it out the park, baby. I was like, yeah,
Oh,
there we
thank
go.
you. Thank you.
Man, that sent us to the next level,
I
man.
got another one coming up.
Yeah, yes, you do.
Right, it's called The Students.
Oh man, so yeah, I mean that's gonna be exciting. You know what I'm saying, and stuff like that.
yeah.
We get so like I mean the Root to the Truth episodes are great because they're standalone episodes, and we've been doing well. I mean we got the Path Through the Maze,
Yes.
but we're dropping yours coming on next week and stuff
Okay.
like that. Then we have part 2 of Haskins Sensei, and then we get me. I'm like, oh, so it gets to be one of my
I'm
pet
looking
peeves.
forward to that.
Yeah, you know what I mean. We had to re-record it a couple of times because it really want to drive a point home, and not. I mean, it's satire. Of course, I'm always being goofy. You know
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
and stuff like. But it's also going to drive a point home.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those points that we, especially in the world of judo, we sometimes miss. We miss articulating that point that there's a difference between the sport and us doing judo as the martial art. And I think a lot of times the sport representation of the tool that my throws, because tool throws, that's the tool I'm using, and think a lot of times that when people they see that the tool being used, and sometimes folks use that tool out of context, or they don't really understand what's happening. You know what I'm saying? Especially in sport. A lot of times in sport we talk about look, man, as long as I get that wazari, as long as I get that ippon, I'll worry about what throw I threw them on afterwards. You know what I'm saying? And it's until we really get into what we specialize in, or that particular throw is what we're working on, and why it has its name and stuff like that. A lot of that gets lost in the translation, or somebody who should be taking a judo class, or maybe they do, they take a couple of judo classes and they figure they know a thing, and then they get out there and they start naming it as something, and it's completely something else, and so it's kind of that. So that's what's coming up, man.
Yeah. No, I completely understand you. I mean, more people need to learn judo as a martial art and not a sport. Sport should be secondary, but it depends on what a person's getting involved and why they are choosing to get involved in the first place.
Well, I mean, like I said, the founder wanted it to be for everybody, and I think the sport is for everybody. The martial system, maybe not for everybody. But I would tell you 110% that the sport is meant to be a one size. So it's supposed to be for everybody, because that's what he envisioned. Was this is for everybody. I don't want everybody doing this and stuff like that. That's why it has a little bit of everything.
Can I ask you, did the professor Jigoro Kano, did he? I mean, when he envisioned judo, did he envision it as this sport component, or was it supposed to be intended for martial application?
So it was an easy way of looking at this is, I thought it got lost a long time ago, is it was meant to have martial application, but it was meant to be a softer version of its predecessor. I mean, like I said, you had jitsu, which is jujitsu, and people were getting destroyed doing the jujitsu and stuff like that. They were getting their arms broken, like I was demonstrating to one of my students, the original version of Soanagi. When you see it done, the arms turned in the opposite direction and stuff like that, which, because they argued, the debate was, how would you get an arm to turn this way? So your palm's up, and the crook of your elbow is facing, it's out, you know what I'm saying, and stuff like that, or facing down, and how I would get that. And so we went to that whole mechanic, and he said, oh, wow, that's kind of crazy. And I said, imagine if you got this wrong in practice. Just once. It don't take one time to get it wrong. I mean, watch this happen all the time, and with guys in BJJ, when guys are doing heel hooks and they catch the hook and don't release. Then there are a lot, you know what I'm saying, and stuff like that. There's no tap time. There's no real play there, or they get a good knee lock, right? You get a good knee lock, and understanding that if I don't let that knee lock go and I keep going, I break your knee, and once it's broken, it's broken. You're out 6 months, gone to a year. So
yeah, so that right there is something for our listeners to understand, that what is the best approach when going into these submission holds? How you should be applying them where you do not injure your partner.
So ideally, I would tell you a best practice is just so once you get to where you know where that, once you got to that knee bar and you know it's there, let it go. I mean,
That's what I do.
and tuck your ego away. And
Right.
so it was, of course, you're going to have that person who may not have felt that the knee bar was there and say to you, "Oh, you didn't have me. You didn't get,"
Right.
because that happens all the time, right? Or you didn't get that ankle pick. You didn't get the ankle lock. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. You know, and you just okay, it didn't happen. So that's your thoughts on a thing, and I guess you can agree to disagree, pun intended.
I know when a lock, based on my experience, I can feel a lock.
Oh yeah, well, you do
When
it
it's
enough
in
times in
place,
practice. That's why I say you
could
practice it
tap.
enough times. Yeah, and then you get to roll with it. And I often tell folks it's the same thing when you're doing judo. Like the thing about a contest throw is a lot of times is there's a degree of intent there, but the idea is still to throw somebody in such a way where they can still protect themselves. You know what I'm saying, and stuff like that. So I think sometimes that's gotten lost. To circle back to answer your question, I don't think Kano would recognize judo as what it is now or what it's morphed into now because you have that separation. I think it was supposed to be a one size fits all. It was supposed to be a gentler version of jitsu, um, taking the best parts, you know, and a way to continuously practice it. Because even the way we fall for judo isn't the way you're supposed to fall. Like it's not the way we teach elderly people to fall and stuff like that, right? The falling for judo is designed to constantly take impactful,
For the
yeah,
class.
for the class. Even the rolls in judo are really practicing to being thrown. It's not a roll. It's not a combative roll like I'm going to do this to roll and stand, get to my feet. No, this is for me to get used to being thrown repetitively and stuff like that. So it makes sense when you get into that. And they had the forms of fitness that were added in a timiwaza. If you're learning judo as the martial art, you know that there's a timiwaza, which is striking. For those that don't know, you know it's there. And it's always ever present, and you start learning those principles from day one, and stuff like that, which were the forms of fitness. And any old school judoka knows that. We had the punch, and we had the ridiculous punch into the air, looks like a hadouken, from a Street Fighter. But you have all of that there, and then if you were just focusing on the sport, a lot of the sport stuff just lost that part because it was like, well, we're trying to get people to the Olympics. We're trying to get them to this level. So you're not going to worry about this. Like I think if I have it correctly, and I could be wrong, and if somebody's out there that can say, hey, man, no, you have that wrong. I think it was I want to say it was either Jimmy Pedro Jr. or Jimmy Pedro Sr. that really focused on the gripping game, which changed the game. You know what I'm saying? And or at least changed the game here in the United States. It really did. It changed how we looked at judo. And how it was more like, okay, so we all have these tools, right? We all understand osotogari, right? How do I get to that osotogari? How? Well, I do. I pull here, and he steps there, and I get my osotogari.
Right.
Okay, all right, I guess.
Or is it how
maybe
he moves?
Yeah, or yeah, it could be how he moves. Like so, and then it was like, well, he can do whatever he wants, but if I get this grip here and I get this here, he ain't moving like that. That's just never gonna happen for him. You know what I'm saying, and stuff like that. And then I use something else to get me here, and it was just so here. But again, Jimmy said, grips. You can't do any of that stuff if you don't have the right grips. You know what I'm saying? Like the distance and timing, yeah, it's great if you can get into that position. Now, what happens if you can't get into that position? Then you can never use that throw. You can't get it off. And then how do you get to a position so that the other guy can't throw? You know what I'm saying? So you can dominate. It's kind of like when we think of striking, right? Like I hit you, boom. I always say point fighting had a place, right? Right. Everybody knocks point fighting, but the idea behind point fighting is pretty solid.
Yeah.
I hit you in such a way where you can't hit me back.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And in a way where it's so back in the day it was impactful, right?
Right.
I blast you in that chest, and you on the ground holding sternum, and stuff like that, and you never got to hit me back. It was the one punch, one kill, right? And so it's kind of like that in a way, if we really want to look at that and examine.
It's focusing on a strategy.
Yeah, well, yes, and that made it more. It's not complicated because judo really is. If there are people out there, I know somebody say, "Oh, you're kind of selling a complication." No, it's not a complication. Learning the tool or the throw That's not complicated. I'm either going to load, I'm going to reap, I'm going to do all these things, right? And you can put it all in a cup, as one of my friends likes to say. Put that part in a cup. But now you got gripping, which is its own separate thing. You know what I mean? Then you got the blocking part, which is its own separate thing. And then you got and
Yeah.
you got all these other pieces that all fit in. And you learn this when you randuri. So like that's what we always tell folks: if you really want to have a really good understanding of judo, all you need is the randuri no katas and stuff, because these are the things you're going to use in randuri. But then it was I want to say Ken Duran Sensei, out in New Hampshire. I think he's out in New Hampshire. I hope I have that right. And there are other kata that go to the forms of countering, right? That should be added in, all right? Because you're going to have counters. You're going to have
Right.
things that happen.
Gyakuwazas.
Yeah. And then there's
Counters for counters.
well that's getting really complicated. But then of course then you got the gripping sequences,
Yes.
right, and stuff like that. Boom. Now all these things. If you have those, then you got good judo, right? And then a good competitor really only has 3 throws, 2.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But they have all over the place gripping strategies. You know what I mean? But they only have 2 throws they use. But man, oh man, but you have your favorite grip. I know I can shut boom boom, and I get here. And I call it the Reiner. I get to that Reiner grip, Teddy Reiner, and I got it. And I know from my Reiner grip, I can get this, I can get this, I can get this. Right?
Facts.
Yeah, man. I'm like, it's just one of them things. But so anyway, yeah. So that's coming up. I'm really happy. I'm happy about all the standalone episodes. I feel like all of them have been doing very well, getting us to modern combatives. So all of this, ladies and gentlemen, has kind of been putting us in a place so that we had more content, because we were always being asked, why do you guys stop? Well, the podcast is great, but we'd like to see more of you guys. We'd like to see more of you talking, this, that. We've really embraced the video too. I feel like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, we need somebody doing makeup at some point, but but we really embraced that part, and we've really been leaning a lot more into it and stuff like that. And being so far away, I feel like we kind of had to start leaning more
We
into
had
that.
we had to own into it, and also it gives our listeners and viewers a way to really feel us as individuals and how we come together. It's like I like to say, it's like baking a cake.
Yeah.
All right. Like, hey, listen, I'm flour. This guy's the eggs.
And I'm extremely expensive right now.
Right. Yes. And so it's important that we bring all those components together.
Yeah.
The Marshall Maze presents Route to the Truth and Paths Through the Maze. These standalone episodes are a deep dive into the martial arts industry. Both series are brought to you by the creators of the Marshall Maze podcast. And the Marshall Maze presents Modern Combatives. New episodes drop bi-weekly on YouTube, so you don't want to miss out. That's the Route to the Truth and Paths Through the Maze on YouTube or where you listen to your favorite podcast.
We did have 2 topics today. One of which I feel like we've covered these in the past, and one of the main things was vetting, and this comes up a lot. The vetting process, in not just making sure that you. One of the hardest parts about our industry is that we don't, because there's different avenues to go down, especially with hybrid school. You get somebody who gets kicked out of one place and then can walk into another place. And, maybe, and I believe that everybody deserves the degree of a second chance to set and third, except for, pedophiles, child molesters, and those folks, and folks that have committed serious felonies. So I guess they're, whatever. However, with that being said, if we had a database or some way we were all united, and I know McDojo Life does a really good works in this department to really kind of make sure these guys don't get to just bounce around. I think we do ourselves, because we are divided, such a huge disservice in that, you know what I'm saying, in that realm of just trying to keep other people safe. But I do believe that there should be some kind of vetting. And even just for us in judo and jitsu, in the insurance side of things, somebody walks in and they claim that they belong to. Well, I trained at the Team Bellator or something like that. They went to an MMA school or whatever, and they have rank, and then they walk in, and we don't make a phone call. We're not checking. I'm not saying at the places I'm at, but I'm just going in general. They're not calling the other place to make sure. We do. Because, again, I come from a traditional karate background where somebody walks in, hey, yeah, I trained with this person. Oh, that's awesome. You did, da-da-da. Hold on. And I'm kind of nodding to somebody else, and then we dial in real time. Like, hey, man, we got a guy here who's claiming. And we making sure you're, A, who you said you are, and B, in insurance cases, this just recently happened where there's a person, he was at a dojo, they're grappling on the ground, and he gets hurt. He gets seriously injured. And then he goes and sues the dojo. And the dojo's like, oh, well, you belong to the federation, so you should be able to just use your insurance. Well, he didn't belong to that federation. He never did, or let his stuff lapse or whatever, for whatever reason. And, of course, the federation or the group that you belong to says, in any insurance, we're not paying this claim because he shouldn't have been there. He shouldn't have been on the mat. You know what I'm saying? It's like you get into a car accident with no insurance. The insurance company's not going to pay the claim, especially if you're at fault. And it's had me really meditating on this. And again, if you had a vetting process or if you were looking at the background, that's part of that. It's making sure that person, okay, you're all right. So you're saying you're USJF. Oh, God, I should be able to look you up. You know what I'm saying? Even if my club isn't a USJF club, I should still be able to look you up. You know what I'm saying? And I do have to admit, in some of these different groups, especially in judo, if you don't belong to that, you don't have that information. The only good thing is you can still call, their headquarters and say, hey, I have a guy who wants to come in, he wants to train, he's claiming XYZ. We want to make sure that part's all right before we invite him to train with us. Now, if you're a judo school, you have to belong to at least one of the three major groups in order to just have a place. But I have been, there's this one place I went to where they just had their own private insurance. And the guy was like, well, because, yes, we do teach judo. I just don't like the politics, for whatever reason. You don't want to belong to anything. And his guys can still compete and stuff like that. So he's like, I do that little day waiver to go compete at this tournament because no one's going to turn down revenue, and they get to go compete. And so I said the only issue I had with when him and I were having that conversation was if you got a guy would be considered a black belt, obviously he can't compete because there's no way to validate his rank and stuff like that. So that was it. No, anyway. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, first in my school, I put most folks through an interview process first. I used to do background checks, but I, pulled back on that a little bit. I sit down and interview them. I ask them all the right questions. I look in their eye. If I feel something, then I may research it a little bit deeper. This is a problem all around, all across the board. With schools that are private like myself, or let's just say you have a hybrid system of sorts, I think having organizations and having those kind of plugins to be able to do those kind of background checks is very important because, listen, first and foremost, your place should be a safe space. All right? And so you shouldn't be having, aggressive individuals, molesters, pedophiles, whatever you want to call them, in there, gang members. I mean, there's been situations where you had a student for about maybe a few years, okay, and you didn't realize that person was affiliated with a gang, and he was taking what you were teaching and teaching his brothers in the gang, all right? And they're out there causing mayhem all over the place. This is a serious, serious problem, and we got to do better, okay, to be able to neutralize those. So, no, I feel you 100%. It's just a little difficult because when you're dealing with organizations like yourself, you teach judo, all right? If you're dealing with karate, let's just say traditional systems. Most traditional systems have an organization you should be a part of. I was part of one and broke away from that as well. When you're teaching something that's on a grand scale, if you weren't a part of an organization, I don't know.
Well, no,
I
okay,
kind of weigh it like I
well,
need
I
to
don't.
see what you know
Yeah.
because there's so many checks and balances that come with that. So I believe that vetting is very important. I had a student, matter of fact, not a student, correction, not a student, someone who was seeking to learn. And I was at Prospect Park in Brooklyn, and I was teaching right there on the green, right? And I get an audience all the time when I'm teaching out there, right? And there's this one individual, he was really ogling really hard, right? And he was just waiting. He was staring at me so hard I could feel the laser beams on me, okay? And he was just waiting for one moment for me to make eye contact. And as soon as I made eye contact, he waved hard. All right, and I just acknowledged them, but I continued teaching the class, right? And then when I had them doing their drills, all right, for like 10 minutes, I put the timer on, okay, and I'm watching and critiquing as I'm moving through them, all right, and then I take a break and I step back to observe the whole scene. He comes behind me, all right, he's like, "Excuse me, sir, sensei." All right. And he bows and he's like, "Hey, listen, I would love to be a part of your school. I love what you're teaching out here." And he just kept rambling and rambling, and he was all over the place with his discussion. And I'm listening to all this. He was like, I got a 3rd-degree black belt in Sanuka Ryu. I got a 2nd-degree black belt in judo. I trained under Ronald Duncan. I trained under Baba. And he was just name dropping. Ba, 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 ba. And these are red flags, extreme red flags. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's freaking all over the place. Most people who go to college stay at that one university and graduate from that university. And then occasionally if you move or if something doesn't mesh right, then you can transfer to another institution. But this guy was all over the place. So I said, "Hey, all right, seems like you've been bounced around a bit, okay? You said you trained under such and such individual. I know 3 or 4 of those people that you just mentioned personally. If you want to be a part of this school, I'm going to ask you, why aren't you still training with them now? Employment, this, that, and 30, gave all these excuses. And I said, okay, well, if you have these ranks, I will have to call them personally and ask. And just to know, I mean, you could have said less.
Yeah.
And that would have been better.
Fine,
yeah, but you dropped all of this to sort of impress me, which I look at those as red flags. And once I said that, he kind of backed off a bit, but was cool. And he had my number. He called me the first time, and I said, "Hey, listen, I spoken to X, Y, and Z," and I didn't hear back from him again after that. Once I said that, "Hey, what you said about your rank was not valid," and he was like, "Well," he gave me these mixed up excuses. "Well, I had this and that and da 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 da," and I'm just sitting here listening to him, and I said, "It's okay. But I can't have you at this school because you started off on a lie. And if you start on a lie, I can't have you as a student because this is a place of truth." All right. And I take that very, very seriously. So I say to all instructors out there, if you have a student, regardless of their martial background or non-martial background, to do a background check and to vet, because you don't know what kind of viper you may be letting in your system.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of truth to that. No, there really is. Which is why, again, I can't say it enough. Background checks, definite, and some way of vetting.
Yeah.
If somebody says they train with somebody, you should always make a phone call. You should always make sure that person, is left in good standing.
Yeah.
Because we get it. I mean, people move and stuff like that, or somebody will recommend, and again, I guess I get a little spoiled because of, obviously judo is regulated in such a way where a lot of guys will know this person or that person, and well, I trained under this person, and some names have more notoriety than others. But ultimately, there's still a way to look someone up and say, oh, well, no, that person is, and that's who they trained under, and that's what they got their rank for, and then you can move forward from there. But yeah, definitely, there should always be a way to vet. And like I said, it's all about getting a peace of mind. And again, dojos are supposed to be safe spaces, and they won't be safe spaces if we're not doing any of that kind of stuff. I mean, it doesn't take a whole lot to just even look someone up. And there's different platforms out there where you can actually do a background check on someone, and that stops a lot of people at the door, or especially people that have or you'll get that truth right away. I kind of did a thing back in the day and stuff. But with that being said, there has been plenty of examples, and I said, do you know who you're training? Where there's gang members or people that belong to certain groups, or even terrorist organizations or have been deemed to be terrorist organizations later on, who go and they train and they learn. And look, what better way? Here's an easy way to look at this. So they have a blue belt program for police officers, right? And so the officers are going into training and they're learning some of this jitsu, and it's going to help with policing, not going from compliant to non-compliant. And this is great, right? And meanwhile, is that instructor teaching other folks what you're learning? Because you're learning this stuff specifically for a reason. And then what you don't want to have is you don't want to have a criminal know what you know. That can get off, you know what I'm saying, that understands that, you're going to try to tie him up and do all this other stuff, and starts to develop a way around it, So I'm just a little bug in the ear on that one. It's a little more complex and complicated than that, but I remember being told this by someone in corrections that they had some of the guys that were part of the I forgot what gang, but they had the 52 blocks and stuff, but they were also learning how to disarm a police officer, and do what they needed to do, and they're training this, right? And they were training it in the prison. And I just remember him telling the story about it. I'm not sure if it was at an academy. I'm trying to remember the brother's name too. On top of it, was like 5 million years ago. But the point I'm making is again, this is why we want to vet. This is why we want to make sure that we're checking these folk out and stuff. So I mean, to just kind of keep that in the back of the head, the back of the burner.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. We don't do this enough. We just take any Joe Schmo that comes in off the street, as long as they got bread to pay for their classes. That's a paying student. So if most folks did background checks from a business perspective, it's kind of funny because this is the connection with even the immigrants here working on farms and really doing the services that the average citizen would not do, all right, but they're doing. And so, hey, listen, my job is easier because I keep the house full. The mat is full, all right? So by doing background checks, will eliminate quite a few individuals.
Well, listen, man, that's something we can do a deep dive into. Trust me, they know that. They know who they're hiring. Don't make the mistake. No one's walking in with a fake ID getting the job. You know what I'm saying? Or any of that. No, I'm
that
like
guy's a good fighter.
Yeah.
I can see that guy got talent. I know he grew up on the block. He's been locked up quite a few times, but we need some championships here. And this guy's
going to make a championship. Well, look, man, I do believe that there are ways back from redemption. I mean,
yes.
We've known plenty of people that have turned their lives around and stuff like that. Again, the only time you don't get a pass from me is anything, any kind of rape, male or female.
Right.
So any kind of child molestation, male or female, don't care. There's no, whatever. And
I believe.
And anything. I mean, yeah. And I'm like, again, and so I'm 2 steps further than that. I'm like, look, I don't support any kind of racism, way, shape, or form. So that's there is no debate or agree to disagree.
That's a major turnoff.
Yeah, and stuff like that. Yeah, you out. I'm like, I can't, for lack of a better term, fucks with you.
Yeah.
And and if you have an issue with the LGBTQ community, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, yeah, man, I take big issue with that because for a lot of reasons, mainly because they're people. You know what I'm saying? And that they deserve all the rights and privileges of everybody else.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And,
Right.
and they've been here the whole damn time.
Right.
We can go all the way back to biblical times. Them folks have been here the whole time. So stop it. You know what I'm saying? And stuff like that.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. My place is a safe space for everyone to come and to get educated.
Nice.
It has nothing to do with your background. Now, if you're someone, and this is the reason why I interview. All right. I have some students, like I have some that stayed here and some that left. All right. That were Christian, but they are really connected to their church. And so by me having the Kamidana, the Shinto shrine, and all of that, and breaking down all of the cultural history and the richness of this and why we open our class in ritual and end in ritual, doesn't rest well with Muslims, doesn't rest well with, and we're talking people who are really like dedicated to their path. Let's just use that as, and so it doesn't sit well with these individuals. Rastas, I had plenty of them come here and they just were like, even when I break it all down, it definitely resonates and it makes sense. The thing is that who are we serving? You're serving yourself, all right, first and foremost, and you're just paying homage to Mother Earth. Real simple stuff. And by paying homage and taking care of Mother Earth is taking care of the Most High. It's all braided in. But because of dogma, it conflicts, and they find some way to look at how it doesn't connect. And that's one aspect. Another aspect is just people with different lifestyles. All right. So if you are LGBTQ plus, that can be conflicting for some individuals that partake in those particular practices, and that alone can cause disruptions in your school. And so I eliminate that at the very beginning.
Well, because we've talked about this in the past, and depending on whether you're not listening to the podcast, the Marshall Mays, or the Route to the Truth, we do talk about that. Yes, there is a degree of spirituality and stuff that comes into the arts, and most arts, or anything that teaches anybody how to kill, or a code of ethics, right? Ultimately, combatives,
It's
when you learn,
mental.
doesn't really care. Like ultimately, here's the thing: if the enemy is shooting at me from over there, I'm not going to stop and say, "Whoa, did you used to be a boy?" No, I'm gonna be like, "Hey,
Do
here's
you
a
have
gun."
children?
Yeah, shoot back, right? Yeah, I'm like, I'm just
got
not.
a wife?
Yeah. I'm not doing that. It's combatives, right? We're
Right.
fighting.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? No one's gonna stop. No one's gonna care, right? And I'm
Right.
like, I think that's a complication.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that. That is an extreme complication because we have gun right laws that are being created right now with background checks, okay? And because it's like, wait a minute, can anyone just come up in here and buy one of these tools?
Yeah.
All right, and not be mentally sound?
Constitutional carry.
Okay. And this is hazardous. All right, because basically,
Wait a minute. What do you mean? I hear voices. You're saying I shouldn't have an AR?
no.
Why? I mean, but the voice in my head is telling me I should have one. But I mean, we're making fun of something very seriously. But yes,
but
very
still,
serious,
it's the same thing. It's the same dynamic, and so I need to make sure that you are competent. I need to make sure you're a responsible human being, and that you're doing all the right things. Because you're teaching something hazardous.
Well, I think that's the problem. I don't think most, when they think martial arts, they don't think killing.
No.
Most think self-protection, self-defense.
Or something for kids.
Well, yeah, something for, yes, oh my goodness.
That
something
kills me.
for kids. You know what I'm saying? Well, because again, you wouldn't have a kids class if a parent thought for 1 second that their kid is learning how to murder another child. Do you really think that parent's going to continue to send the kid there? Like I had a parent last night say to me about their children because the child took Taekwondo originally back in the day, and the mom's talking about how the kid, she said, well, yeah, and it was so good. Yes, sir. No, sir. And they're going all of that, and I know it's Taekwondo, low hanging fruit, but it's it it was just what they took out of it. And she started talking about our program, and was like, well, I love how the kids are so disciplined, and I'm like, yeah, but you said nothing about the judo they're learning. I'm like, what?
Look at that throw, Timmy.
Yeah. I'm like,
Look at
do you
that.
realize when Timmy throws, and the person hits the ground, if they don't know how to fall, Timmy's gonna hurt him really bad. Like,
And that's funny, right? When it's in wrestling, that what you're talking about is right there.
Yeah.
That's how you throw them.
That's how you get it until real life. And then you're that parent that's had to block your kid, and now you're in juvie court, and you're being sued because that back slam that he did in that wrestling match, where he did it to somebody else in real life, and he kind of cracked the kid's head open, and now the kid's brain dead basically. And and there's that. I think personally that's the thing that keeps getting lost. Is that in martial arts that we don't sell the part that says, because we always clown it, right? Yeah, I've even caught myself doing it, clowning somebody. This is going to be a kill move, and I'm going, well, how many people have you killed? Like, and I try not to laugh when I say it, but it's like, how many people have you killed? And I make jokes about it, but I recently had somebody just break it down, just sat back with me, and it was like a country time lemonade kind of thing. We're sitting on my porch, and we're just kind of rocking in the rocking chairs because I got nice to see it. When you come down, it's good.
Yeah, I
got a nice
can't wait.
ranch, you know what I'm saying?
I can't wait.
And I was rocking in the rocking chairs and stuff like that. Haskins, you heard me say rocking chairs, bro. I'm like, so I know you're a fan of the show, so yeah, come on down, rocking chairs. We have them and stuff, and we're just. And he was saying to me, he says, but if you kept using the term kill. It does, because I get it. You're not breaking necks, you're not killing people. But he was like, but if you keep bringing up the word kill, it will sink into somebody. What they're learning is learning how to kill. They're learning how to destroy. They're learning none of these things are technically good things if you take them out of context, right? Even when I'm defending my home, I killed that person, right? I still murdered. I mean, well, not murdered. I defended. Those are two different things. But I killed the person, right? And I still got to be able to reconcile that and deal with that. And there's the spirituality, there's the code, and stuff. I have to be able to.
Components.
But we because we've separated it, we kind of don't really say kill in the classroom. We don't. In fact, in the Karate Kid, I always say the instructor in part 3 had it correct. Oh, I say in all of them the villain had it correct because that's what it was. It was to kill. That like when he learned it in the military, it was to kill. It wasn't just, hey, let's do these moves and we're going to just hurt the person. No, we're in a time of war. I did this to kill you. You know what I'm saying? It's unarmed combat, and if I got close enough and I have my knife, I'm stabbing you 3 or 4 times and you are dead. You know what I'm saying? I'm stopping, air quotations, the perceived threat. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like, and if you did that, but imagine, so my buddy was sitting on the porch, so imagine the marketing. How would you market that?
What people do.
And I was terrified.
Back in the 80s, they did.
But yeah. But think about why it shifted. Think about the growth in kids' classes, right? Because there's revenue there, right? And think about why the narrative shifted. Why we moved farther away from that, where we call traditional karate or traditional martial art, right? And we got more into the sport MMA dynamic because, well, I can look at MMA and, yeah, it's brutal, but it's only to a pulp. There was a really good reel going around. I forgot the guy who was fighting, but he threw the guy, and I still think the guy landed on his side, but the referee disqualifies him and says, because you made him land directly on his head. He landed on his head. And the guy's like, what are you talking about? He was trying to turn it, and from the viewpoints, it looked like really his shoulder, but not his head. But it didn't matter. And even in something as brutal as MMA, there was still a degree of safety. Right, it sounds really weird me saying that, but because you're trying to knock the guy out, you're trying to break him out, trying to tap him out, right? But there's still a degree of safety there. You know what I'm saying? So, okay, safe space. Which takes it away from the whole killing part. Like, it was really deep, man. We were sitting on the porch, and I'm like, and it sat with me, and I'm really just meditating on just using that term over and over again.
Well, I would say that, yes, you're right. There was a paradigm shift. Back in the day when we were learning martial arts, it was strictly for the streets. It was for survival. There were tournaments, and I didn't jump into martial arts for tournaments.
No.
I mean, kickboxing was on TV, and it was cool and all, but no, when you were going into a martial art class back in the day, it was to learn how to defend yourself. It was to learn how to fight. All right, I make a distinction between the two: defending, learning self-defense, and learning how to fight. All right, they are close because you're dealing with violence, but two different things. And so you need both of those. And so back in the day, that's how it was marketed to us. And then on top of this, the militaristic kind of element. I realized that when I met my sensei, and he told me, no, Koryu Budo was not, yes, sir, no, sir, and bowing and looking at each other and all this other stuff that we were raised in. He was like, nah, it was not like that in Japan. We did not do that in Japan. And it wasn't militaristic. That happened since World War II, and they started infusing that in there. And so as far as learning Budo is concerned in Japan, did not have those kind of components that we all grew up in. All right. And to experience that, I was like, oh, we were actually just bad human beings. Like, I mean, not bad as in bad, but like really good human beings that just knew how to defend themselves. No more different than animals in nature. And we just understood our tools. And then there will be times of war. And that is when that part would peak. All right, with mannerisms and attitudes and all those other things. What are you going to do to protect your wife, your village, or whatever? That would all trickle in. But the average person who was living on the land, no more different than you having a farm or you living in your neighborhood, you were just living the everyday apple pie life. All right, and just, God forbid, someone put hands on you. Then you knew how to turn that switch on. Now, one of the biggest issues I still deal with to this day, because it's who I am, but I have an instant, and this is something that people deal with PTSD. It's a constant loop of the matter that happened, and it won't leave or until it just kind of spins off somewhere into the verse. That is very freaking real. And so you have to have, when we speak spiritual or talk about those insights that are part of martial arts, and I speak about this in this episode for the student, we're not therapists, we're not counselors.
That's a good time to plug the Shrunken Heads podcast. It's done by two clinical therapists, Black and Poe.
Okay.
They help us navigate that.
Yeah.
You want to tune in. You might be, well, we're about to cut right to that commercial right now.
Hey, I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Shannon.
And together,
we are Shrinking Heads,
two mental health providers, here to help you explore the jungle of mental health.
We invite you to join our bi-weekly podcast,
where we explore everything from how to find a therapist to how to break up with your therapist.
And we're going to use humor to hack through the jungle, because humor is self-care too.
So we encourage you to join us and download our podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, CastBox, Spotify, all of those major places. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Shannon.
And together,
we are Shrinking Heads.
Okay, and we're back. I hope you enjoyed that commercial. That was a great plug.
Yeah. And so I have to keep it 100% about that. It depends on your expertise as an instructor. And so even though my school is based on my nature and how I carry myself, and it's in the name. I specialize in certain things, and I only teach what I'm certified in, and I stay away from the things that I'm not certified in. All right. And so this is where the mental part comes in. The spiritual part is the icing on the cake. When you have the spiritual part that you can add into it. But the mental fortitude that you need to have when you are committing an act of violence, and to be fine with it after it's done.
Yes. Oh, as I told you, I'm rocking, and it literally kept me up till like 3 a.m. just meditating. If we just started using the word kill.
Yeah.
Every time. And been serious, like as serious as a heart attack, as serious as that brother when we were filming him, he said kill and stuff like that. Because I remember saying, like, how many times has he actually killed somebody? Like, and I remember clowning it, think it was funny and stuff. And then you start really getting into it. And so again, after meditating on it, and I'm like, because when I'm using my firearm, when I'm at the range, I'm thinking kill.
Yeah.
The whole time.
But it's not a
You know
real
what I'm saying?
person you're shooting
Yeah.
at.
But in my mind, I'm still thinking I'm stopping the perceived threat. You know what I'm saying?
Until
I'm using
it
that
really
tool.
happens.
Yeah, until it really happens. Now, how do I deal with this? How do I reconcile it, right? So in my mind, I'm always envisioning that worst case scenario. So then I take that mindset and I brought it to the dojo with me and then smiled because I realized, shit, man, I'm just teaching judo.
Stop it.
Yes.
What the heck?
Yeah, no, and instantly I felt good about life. All right, and with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are at time, man. We could be talking about this forever. But yeah, so again, well, we back for this one. Hopefully we're back to the regular schedule at least once a month, but both of us together in the same place, same time. I'm with my partner in crime, Brockula Chidoshi.
And I'm with my partner here, Israel Lopez Sensei.
And you've been listening to
The Marshall Maze.
Peace and Soul.